Let's bring in Florida Congresswoman Laurel. She sits on the House Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees and was at the border hearing in McAllen, Texas, where the patrol chief spoke. Congresswoman, welcome. Were you surprised or to hear that Ortiz basically tell it like it is?
Well, Chief Ortiz told us what we already knew. And if Joe Biden and Democrats would spend time on the southern border like Republicans did last week, they would see the same thing we did. His policies at the border aren't just a failure, they are an unmitigated disaster. We heard testimony that we lack operational control, that our border isn't secure, and as a consequence, Mexican drug cartels are using our southern border to bring fentanyl and human trafficking into the United States. Time and again, we heard the stories of local law enforcement who lack the resources to deal with the surge in criminal activity, and local farmers and ranchers who've been forced to abandon their own property because the drug cartel is committing criminal activity right there on their private lands. This has been an absolute disaster for communities down on the southern border, and House Republicans are committed to ensuring that we are getting transparency for the American people, and our next stop is going to be to talk to additional members of Border Patrol who are responsible for securing those sectors, and Secretary Mayorkas. We deserve answers and we deserve accountability.
What do you make of the fact that at the top, the boss, Mayorkas, says, yeah, it's under operational control, we're handling it, yet you're hearing story after story after story from those on the ground who have to face it every single day. That's not the case.
Well, it's inexplicable how the secretary could come to Congress and testify, how he could look at the American people and tell them that this border is secure. If he would come down and he would talk to these local sheriffs about the kind of crime that they're seeing, the destruction in their communities, if he would actually sit with and hear from these families, it simply can't be said any other way. Our border is not secure. We're not able to control the cartels, and the tragedy to American families has got to be stopped.
Meanwhile, there's something else that's come out that's actually pretty astounding. That is that the administration spends $50 million a year, $130,000 a day, to store pieces of the border wall. They are panels, they're lying flat, they're in the desert on private property. This is taxpayer money going to pay for the Trump border wall pieces that are not being erected vertically, they're horizontal. Yesterday, I talked to Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker here on Fox News Live about that, and here's what he said.
These are pieces of the wall or the fence, whatever you call it, that the taxpayers have already paid for. The money has been expended. Instead, we are actually paying defense dollars to private landowners to store these portions of the wall rather than put them up and protect the border. The position of this administration and the vast majority of Democratic Party is that we want an open border. That's the only conclusion I could have.
Are you astounded? I mean, are you just blown away the fact that, you know, this stuff has been manufactured, it's sitting out there on private property, and we're paying to store it and it's not being used?
Well, it's indefensible. And so we also heard testimony last week that construction of the wall, that physical barrier and the infrastructure around it is an important part of helping the men and women of Border Patrol do their jobs and do them safely. They are working down there so hard every day, and that lack of a physical barrier just makes that job harder. This is just another example of the Biden administration's misguided economic priorities. We need more Border Patrol agents, not more IRS agents. And it is time that they face the reality of what these policies are actually doing to the American people.
And finally, what can Congress do? Do you see any potential legislation to finally put an end to the chaos that we're seeing on the southern border?
Absolutely. There are two things we can do. And the first is what you saw last week. We have the ability to call hearings, to bring in witnesses, to get answers and transparency for the American people. And we're doing just that. We are going to ensure that accountability is coming for the members of this administration who are responsible for these choices. The second thing that you'll see out of Congress is legislation. We are absolutely committed to finding the ideas and the solutions that will actually solve this problem and return our southern border to a place where it is secure.
Congresswoman Laurel from Florida, on the border, the situation down there, you saw it yourself firsthand. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us here.